Hello and welcome to another episode of Neurodiversity with Theo Smith and friends. And today I'm joined by an incredible comedian. Well, kind of comedian by night and corporate world by day. I think this is kind of a typical, somebody who's not fitted in maybe, somebody whose brain is working in a little different way to others, finding other mechanisms to keep their brain busy. I don't think this is that uncommon, but often not talked about as much. Today, we're going to hear from the incredible Sasha Frank, and I've had the pleasure of just listening to some of her snippets of comedy, because I'd have to travel across the world to really see her live. Maybe one day, right? Maybe one day I'll be lucky enough when you come to the UK and deliver a performance there. But lovely lived experience, incredible joy she brings to the audience and the stage, and very much in the moment, right? Literally feeding off what's in front of her. And I bet she brings her skills to a day job in exactly that context as well. So, a wonderful introduction to the incredible Sasha Frank. Sasha Frank, welcome. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Thanks, Theo. So, I'm Sasha Frank. As you say, I am living here in Singapore. I live over in Asia. I'm from the UK originally. I'm from London, born and bred. I do have a day job, as you say, and by night and at the weekends, I am a stand-up comedian, which I've been doing actually for not super long, just coming up for a couple of years. But I kind of people ask me how long I've been doing it. I feel like I've been in comedy in some way my whole life. I've been acting since I was 2 years old. I've done improv forever. And it was only really a couple of years ago I thought, how do I really want to apply this? I might give stand-up comedy a try. And I did it once and I was hooked. I remain hooked and it has completely changed my life.
Incredible. Yes, and maybe there's something in this, right, in the way that the human brain works, is uh, kind of the improvisation was my best area of performance and acting. It was the area where I thrived most, I enjoyed most, and where I was just able to go to levels that other people weren't able to go. Just my brain went there very quickly. So I'm interested in
Yes.
that connection, which we can talk about more as we go on. But tell us a little bit about the journey then. Who is Sasha Frank? Like, tell us some of the early days, the journey you've made to only really kind of plugging into comedy now in this stage of your life. Where did that all begin?
So I suppose I was sent to acting classes young. I think it was probably obvious. My mum likes to say I like the sound of my own voice. But I was a very well-behaved kid. I wasn't one of these badly behaved kids. I was the opposite, but I was also quite vocal. I talked a lot. I still do. I grew up, as I say, grew up in the UK. I always did well at school. It never came super easy to me, but it never felt like an option. It was just like you have to excel. And I did. I come from a very working class family. So I was the first person in my family to go to university, which was something I'm really proud of. And I got into the corporate world at 21 because, I had to start earning some money, got into the corporate world at 21, and I loved it. I still love it. It's a massive part of my life. I got married relatively early. I got married in my sort of mid 20s. I have an amazing 10-year-old daughter. I've been divorced about 5 years now. And that is has been a massive, very positive change in my life. That was when I got back into acting, back into improv, and then, as I say, a couple of years ago, then decided that it was time to finally tick something off of my bucket list, and that thing was stand-up comedy.
Incredible. And yeah, it must be, I imagine, exciting, but also quite a daunting prospect. Having those changes going on in your life, still having somebody, a little person you're responsible for, which can't make it easy as well to balance, to be able to, to be able to do all of those things and to be able to have a fulfilling uh, a kind of sideline of comedy that you want to develop and really harness those skills. I mean, how do you manage all of that? How do you manage that dual life? more than a dual life, right? Multifaceted life
Yeah.
that you now have.
So we're very fortunate here in Singapore. A lot of us have nannies, and I do, and I have the best in the world. She's fabulous. She lives here with us. So what I tend to do, I have 50-50 custody anyway, so although my daughter's primarily with me, but when she is with me, if I have shows to do, I tend to put myself on the lineup later in the evening if I can. I will get her to bed. And then my nanny's here obviously overnight. My daughter's 10, she doesn't need me during the night. And then I go off. Singapore's tiny as well, so I have the benefit of getting out to a show and back, honestly, sometimes within 30 minutes if I need to. And then, of course, if I have big shows, if I'm hosting, then I do make an exception, like all parents do, to be out the house a little bit longer. So that's how I manage that. And, my day job is exactly that. It's during the day. If I know I'm going to have a busier week at work, I will not book myself in to do shows in the evenings. But, the way I see it, plenty of people have evening hobbies, people go to the gym, people play tennis. So really, it's actually time-wise, in some ways, no different from that.
Wonderful. That makes complete sense. And where do you get the source of your material? Now, I've heard some, so I got ideas, lots of lived experience. But are you one of those comedians where you're able just to go on stage with that lived experience? Or is there a lot of planning and preparation that goes into those performances?
So it's really an interesting one because early on, I would prep every last breath in a set that I did. So to go back to your first question, it comes from my life experience. I talk about parenting, I talk a lot about dating. If you've probably if you've seen my Instagram, that's what a lot of my material is about. Ironically, comedy is the thing that almost got me out of the dating pool. I was dating very heavily, would go on 3 dates a day. It's quite mad. And then I found comedy, which makes me far, far happier. So that it's the experiences from that. Just to clarify, I'm always very kind about people. I'm not there to to talk badly of anybody. But so it comes from that. But then to go back to what I was saying earlier, I used to prep down to the last word, every single breath, comma, everything. I'm at a different phase now in comedy where I do that less. Um, sometimes I probably should be more prepped. So last night I was very fortunate. I did a headlining set, one of the first times I've been able to do that. And I took a slightly different approach where I wasn't word for word prepped. I know my material well, I know what I'm talking about, but it kind of surprised me that my brain has come further along down the line where I didn't feel like I had to recite and recite and recite. And actually, I had some friends come along last night and say, that's the best we've ever seen you. And I think that I personally do better, less, I shouldn't say less prepared, more off the cuff. And that allows me the flexibility to talk to the crowd, which is my favorite thing in the whole world, which is why I love to host comedy shows. And I do think, but I think it's different for every comedian. That's just how I work.
Yeah. It's brilliant and lovely to see, and that engagement with the crowd. And it's very positive. Some comedians can be very deprecating of individuals in the crowd. There's fun. From
Yeah.
what I've seen, there's fun there, which is great. Very inclusive of those people in the audience and bringing them into the conversation rather than making them kind of the butt of the joke. And which is lovely. And so some of that journey as well of experience, I guess, where you said you didn't like it, and now bringing that out to the thorny side of dating and going into some of those worlds and the conversations around Gen Z that I was seeing there and millennials, I found brilliantly funny. So
Yes.
and I'm not. I see. This is interesting. So I find comedy really difficult to find funny, but I find the lived experience bit that connects with me. Billy Connolly is an example I really connect with, and
Right.
I wonder how many comedians there are, and the ones that I get who are actually ADHD or autistic, and therefore that's why I get them, because they're communicating in a way that I understand, How many more of them is there? I don't know. It is the reality, and especially maybe later to life, and actors as well. Interestingly, we can probably think about that some more as we continue the conversation. But so just tell me then, what I'm fascinated about is where was the point at which you realised, because I know it's later in life, the connection to ADHD, the diagnosis, the journey. Tell me a little bit about that world and where was the aha moment and why? Why does it matter? Why did it care? Why the need to understand your brain in a great detail? Because you've been very successful.
Yeah, I have some habits that I've always seen very negatively. I am insanely messy. To a really, almost embarrassing point. I just don't see the mess. I don't care almost, and I've always been like that. I lose things all the time. I live in complete chaos. You know, my desktop on my computer is just files everywhere. I can't organize anything. My real life is exactly the same. And this has always plagued me. And I just thought I was just not as bright as everybody else. Never mind I was book smart. I just thought I was just not that clever in these senses and was less of an adult than everybody else. And I never really, it was just a thing about myself, oh, Sasha loses all her bank cards. Sasha never knows where her keys are. Ha ha. And then I was watching TikTok one day, and I know that's a terribly unofficial way to learn anything, but I was watching a TikTok and it was talking about adult women with ADHD, and it was just described me. And when I was a kid, Theo, ADHD was for naughty little boys. That's what ADHD meant. I was so far from the description of ADHD. Anyway, so I watched this thing on TikTok and I don't think I did a lot with it in true ADHD spirit, procrastinated and just thought that's something I'll look at another time. And I was in therapy. I was talking to a therapist about something and I can't remember what I said, completely unrelated, and she said, "Do you think you might have ADHD?" And I was like, "That's really funny because I actually do." So she did a test. She did like a do I qualify test, and I ticked every box, and I was doing something else at the same time as she was doing the test, which in itself is probably a sign that I have horrendous ADHD. I shouldn't say horrendous ADHD, high levels of ADHD. And again, I still didn't do anything with that information. Then I moved jobs. I had been in the same company for about 16 years, and I'd always worked under high pressure, and I work well under high pressure. I know there's some science there around dopamine and how that works in ADHD. I work really well under pressure, and my new job was less pressured. It also required me to have very good attention to detail, and these were skills that I have not had to hone in the same way and not where my strengths are. And I love this job. I love the manager I work for, and I wanted to succeed. And when I realized I wasn't succeeding, I thought, okay, now's the time I have to go and get diagnosed. So I went so here in Singapore, for an ADHD diagnosis, you go and see a psychiatrist. I went to a psychiatrist. He said, "You are one of the most textbook cases I've ever seen in an adult woman of ADHD." Gave me Ritalin and sent me on my way. And it just changed my life in the sense that I suddenly understood and understand so much about myself now and why my strengths are what they are. And I look back at things, even when I was at school, I was kind of friends with everyone. I didn't fit in every anywhere, but I could also fit in everywhere. Things like that were just slightly different from other people. Obviously, the creative side, but of course the downsides, the mess, the losing things, the forgetting things, and it just suddenly all made a lot of sense. So that's how I got to where I am now.
Amazing. And just to touch upon the strengths, then, if we think about some of those strengths and challenges, How long has it taken you to be able, and clearly this is a continuous journey, right? It never stops. But how long did it take you to realize the strengths and the challenges and where they overlap and how to support yourself? Because I suppose Ritalin, as you mentioned, is only one element. It sounds like, and this is not for everybody, so I think this is fascinating as well, of somebody who's been very successful in many areas of their life. Certain things change within their life, personal elements to their life, changes in job. Actually, some very positive things. These are not necessarily negative things. Some of these are life affirming things, yet they were flags for you. They were flags to make you think, hang on a minute. Just talk us through some of those realization of those strengths and challenges and what they look like. You shared some of them with us
Yeah,
there, but
I think I spot more of them every day. I mean, I'm sure on stage it helps me. This ability to talk to the crowd and to think on my feet is something that, very flatteringly, other comedians and the audience always say to me, wow, you do that so well, which is so nice because I'm only a couple of years in and I do it well. And I think that it is because it probably is that I'm under pressure, my brain is going constantly. And that's almost easier for me as someone with ADHD than sitting down to write, which when I am not under pressure and I am off, just going off of my own speed and my own steam and my own timetable, that's a lot harder for me. So actually, I'm probably just realizing that now as we're talking. I definitely I always look for efficiencies, in life, in work, and it's one of the things where I don't necessarily feel that I'm the smartest person in the room in everything I do, but my brain works in such a way, probably because a little bit because of the impatience, but also I can think a bit more dynamic or more dynamically. I can think dynamically. And, I'm always looking for what's a better way to do this? What makes more sense? Why are we talking about this? Why are we, not using our time more valuably? Why do we do this? And that I think is a big strength that comes out of the way I think. So those are, some of the many positives.
incredible. And some of the biggest barriers, because you mentioned almost, I think, as I hear it, you went from a high pressure job almost where on a daily basis, maybe you just got carried with it, right? You were in the moment, you had lots to do, go, 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 to a point of where maybe you had to step back, be more strategic, some additional leadership skills. I'm guessing some of this, right? So you tell me the reality of it. Sometimes for others, it may be being pulled into more of the detail and the operational element might be more difficult. So I'm just fascinated to hear around that journey for you from actually it's the increase in responsibility in roles, in extra activities, in child getting older that may have become some additional barriers for you. Can you share some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the need to be really self-motivated, and it's still something I struggle with, like literally daily, with almost everything I do. I don't know if this is, I would be so interested to know if this is a common thing with ADHD. I can be so unself-motivated that I can look at a glass of water on my bedside table and think I should take that downstairs and not take it downstairs because there is this bizarre laziness in me that I can't explain, even though there's no effort required to take it downstairs. And I'm quite sure that that is an ADHD thing. But that translates in my daily life into having to push through certain things. All of us in our day jobs, in our lives, have stuff we don't want to do. And finding the drive to do that sometimes feels such a barrier that I can't make sense of it. And sometimes it's not a big job. I remember I needed to send an email on something, and it was like a three-line email, probably not even that. And I was just like stuck. And I could go and do a huge project and do a comedy show and chair a meeting and do all this stuff. But for some reason, this one small one-line email just felt like this huge hurdle. And that happens to me a lot. And that is something I'm still working to overcome. Um, just to segue a little bit, I was on Ritalin, which helped me massively with that, but I've had to stop taking it. So now I'm trying to self-manage and find other coping mechanisms.
Brilliant. And that's a nice segue because I am fascinated by that because we've spoken in the past and I was aware that you were on Ritalin and there's a shortage of drugs for ADHD as well, which is fascinating, right? Because there's a big need, right? That people are in desperate need for interventions, a variety of different interventions. And I'm fascinated because I have a child who's a girl who's autistic and ADHD and dyslexic and dyscalculic. Lots of labels, too many labels, right? Very much like me in some respects, but she's a girl, which is clearly very different in other respects. So I'm fascinated by experiences specifically of women and girls around the experience of drugs to help with ADHD or other ND traits. Can you just elaborate on some of your thoughts and experiences that you'd be happy to share? And clearly, everyone is different, right? That's why I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, as you say, everyone's different, and if the medication works for you, as it did for me for almost a year, amazing, amazing. I I was finding that the medication was amazing when it was in my system, but as it started to leave my system, which I essentially is withdrawal, I don't know what you would call that, as it, it had done its job and then was, a few hours later no longer doing its job, I would feel horrendous. Now, what's interesting and what I can't answer is how I managed that for a year and then suddenly couldn't. I cannot pinpoint that. And I feel almost a bit of a fraud because I was such an advocate for it and then one day just stopped being an advocate for it. I, and what was happening was I was having these lows that would I felt ill all the time when that, once the Ritalin had run out. I was taking more of it to, not feel like that. And it was affecting my work in some ways because there would be points in the day where I was exhausted because, it's a stimulant um, when you stops working, you have a low and I was very, very tired. I would have to just stop and do nothing for a really long time. And then it was affecting comedy because I kind of had three things that would happen. Either I would still have the Ritalin in my system, in which case I was far too kind of hyper and shaky to really be relaxed and funny, or it was coming out of my system, in which case I had this horrible low and could barely focus and barely think. Obviously, that's not conducive to comedy. Or a third option, and what I was doing is I would have a couple of drinks before the show with the other comedians to try and kind of mute the effects of the Ritalin and counterbalance them. And then I was tipsy, which doesn't really do me much good either. So I do still like a drink before the show, but more of a well-managed one. And none of, and these things was not a good situation for me to be in. And it was every single time and every single day. And again, I don't know how I suddenly just one day clicked. I did have a conversation with a friend where he referred back to a conversation that we had had. And he said, "Oh, you keep saying this." It was just a general joke between he and I. And he said, "You keep making this joke every time we see each other, just banter between friends." And he said, "And it's kind of not funny anymore." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, not I don't remember. I'm not really aware that I had been saying that." And I think I've not been present when I've been with my friends. If I am not really even remembering what was happening because of this feeling that the Ritalin was giving me. And that was the turning point for me. That was when then I was like, okay, if I can't even remember what my friend is referring to because I'm spaced out all the time, something has to change. And I stopped cold turkey. It was about less than a month ago. And have not returned to it. But now I have another challenge because I have to learn to make up for the benefits of Ritalin, and that's something I'm still working on.
Wonderful. I'm really appreciate you sharing that experiences because I think we need all experiences. There's a lack of research and evidence on the impact of drugs to support ADHD or any other ND traits, for example, specifically for women. And for young girls as well. So I think to share these experiences, we can start to provide some additional experiences where we don't yet have the evidence-based research to go on. So thank you. And again, just to highlight, every individual's experience is different. And some people have
Absolutely.
such a great need for intervention that a drug may literally be life-saving in that instance. So just to caveat that.
100%.
So let me just ask then, when you when you're thinking of being a parent, managing so many things as you do, and your ADHD, yay, but your child is not, right? How does that play out? Because I have a balanced experience, but yeah, I'm fascinated by those experiences and anything you'd like to share of being like an ADHD parent for a neurotypical child.
Absolutely. So long before I was diagnosed, we always had this joke that she was the adult in the relationship, which now, of course, makes a lot of sense. So, yes, she is, as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, neurotypical. She has great concentration. She's super organized. She keeps me in line a lot of the time, and she is aware of my ADHD. I talk about it all the time. Sometimes, I think she talks to her friends, oh, my mum has ADHD, and I don't think it's something that is a negative. It does affect certain things. It's hard if you're wired a particular way to sit down and play a board game, for example. To sit and watch a movie. That's not something I do myself. It's therefore hard for me to sit and watch a movie with my daughter because my concentration isn't good, which is where Ritalin was helping. I'm now having to self-manage. And I'm sure there's an element for all parents that kids stuff is not always the most interesting thing. But I have to really manage that. And the way that I manage it is that with my daughter, we do things we both enjoy. There is no point me, I shouldn't say there's no point. I would really struggle to try and engage with something that required a lot of focus, that was not something that I could get my brain around. Um, so we do things. She's also an actress and she likes to sing and dance. We do a lot of karaoke. We dance at home, and that's kind of my way around it. I used to find meal times hard. So just to be very candid, my daughter eats very slowly. She always has done. It's only her and I that eat together, and I have the attention span of a housefly sometimes. And we had to overcome that because it's very hard to sit for 2 hours when you are somebody that has a 30-second attention span. So things like that are really a challenge for me. And I used to really beat myself up about it. Sometimes I still do, honestly. But I'm learning to understand that things don't have to be conventional. We find ways around it. We do different activities when we're together. We spend time differently from perhaps how other families do, and that really works for us both.
Incredible. And do you find that the comedy is a real outlet as well? Because sometimes I think in the world that we live in the structure of the world that we live in, one of the biggest challenges I face is I probably should be out walking more. I probably should be out on stage more. I probably should be out doing my time should be filled more with activity. But by nature of a family makeup and stuff, some of these and the world that we live in, the infrastructure and environments, and you can't always do that. And I wonder whether the comedy and the structure that you've created for your life now enables you to have that outlet that possibly can be really productive for your well-being, your brain, almost like this, what would you call it? Well, ability to get some stuff out of your head as well, right? The noise, the constant, because of
Yes.
the way that you've structured that life now. Tell us your thoughts on that.
I mean, I cannot even explain the extent to which it has changed my mental health. So I suffered anxiety for years. I mean, to the point where during my pregnancy, I was almost hospitalized. Had such bad anxiety. It plagued me before that, it plagued me afterwards. It certainly got a lot better in my mid 30s, but it was only when I started doing comedy that it completely transformed me. I referred earlier to the dating thing. I was heavily dating. I think that's quite common when you're first divorced. You think, oh, well, I must find my next partner because that's how life should look. As I said, and I genuinely was going on 3 dates a day. I was on the dating apps all the time, and it was I'm not gonna, wasn't making me miserable, but it certainly wasn't making me happy. And it wasn't the outlet that I needed. And then I discovered comedy, and there's, I would go as far as to say I'm never really anxious anymore. I am completely out of my own head because I'm able to get on stage. And if of course, we all have stuff that happens and stuff that worries us, but if nothing else, at least while I'm there, while I'm at the comedy club, watching the other comedians, and particularly when I perform myself, it's such a release. I'm not thinking about whatever it is that's worrying me. And, I'm so fortunate to have that outlet that makes me so happy.
That's brilliant. And I always talk about my early days in acting where my therapy, because a lot of the stuff I was getting up to was negative and having a negative impact on my mental health and well-being. The acting, the performing, that was the therapy part of it. It was, using up the energy and also in a positive way, and being able to share feelings. In that instance, as I could be someone else. I could share anger through a part that was meant to be angry, right? So that was okay for me to share that anger in that part,
Yep.
or happiness or whatever. Well, now as an adult, from what I've seen, you can share those emotions as comedy, right? And it's a
Yep.
similar thing. It's sharing those emotions in a way that's acceptable and actually funny for a lot of people, because you're saying the things that they may not want to say or maybe feel uncomfortable saying. And so I love that. I wonder how many other, and we know this is true, other opportunities, and I'm sharing this for people to think about, and you can share afterwards with us, things that provide you with that therapy. And it may be equine therapy, it may be having a horse or going to the stables, it may be a dog or a cat or whatever, a pet therapy, or all the other things that we should be supporting individuals to do, that maybe that is going to have the biggest impact. Forget about medical intervention. This is just life intervention, stuff that was meant to be on this planet, helping us to be the people we were meant to be. I think there's something in that I love. And therefore, I love you sharing that experience and story.
Absolutely. And I'm a horribly annoying friend because if any of my friends suffer from anxiety or they're feeling not themselves, I say, get a hobby, get a hobby. And, I know how irritating that is to hear from someone, but I am truly, exactly what you said, of the view that it is probably the best possible thing any one of us can do.
Amazing. I mean, this is quite a nice place to round up for today. But any other thoughts as we wrap up for today? Any specific pieces of advice, thoughts about ADHD, life in general, what you'd like to kind of leave people thinking about? And then also we can share your Instagram title as well, so people can go and find you and watch your incredible work.
Sure. Look, I think that one thing I recommend, and being neurodiverse is already sets you on the path for this, is have an extraordinary life if you can. Don't, when I talked about parenting, for example, things don't have to be conventional. Don't beat yourself up about not doing things the way that other people do them. Embrace things being different. Those are the stories that people actually love to hear and remember. Those are the things that your kids will remember, and that people will know about you. So I think that not worrying about conforming and embracing the things that make you different is the best possible thing. And not embracing, also accepting is the best possible thing any one of us can do. Don't beat yourself up about things. Everybody's different, and some people are not talking about those things. I am a massive advocate as well for transparency. Talk about what's going on in your life. Talk to the people around you. If it's work, talk to your boss, talk to your friends. Don't keep things inside if it's something if you are comfortable to share those experiences, because you will come to learn that so many people have so many things going on and so many challenges, and yeah, that's what makes us all unique and interesting.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. You've been incredible.
Thank,
Just let us know,
thank you.
what is that Instagram title that people can find you on?
Yes, I am Sasha Frank Comedy on Instagram. I am a millennial, so I don't know if I'm supposed to say Sasha underscore Frank underscore comedy. I'm not sure, but it's Sasha Frank Comedy. That's where you'll find me.
Amazing. And please do go and find Sasha. Sasha, really
Please.
appreciate you, your time, your energy, your effort, what you do, what you're about. It's been a real pleasure getting you on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Theo. It's been fantastic.